SNK released Metal Slug in the arcades in 1996, it became a smash hit. The comical, over-the-top gameplay, amazing animations, awesome weapons, and unique artistic style were big successes, and left fans wanting more. The game was so popular that it made the decision to create a sequel an easy one for the original development team. But what would come next for the franchise? Though SNK and its co-developers must have been tempted to revolutionize the series in 1998, they resisted the urge to do so. The result was a game that mostly retained the original style, but added a few tweaks. Metal Slug 2 was released to lots of hype, and delivered everything the fans wanted. According to Game Machine magazine, it was the third most successful arcade game of the year. Even though it was a smashing success in its own right, the developers soon thought the game could benefit from some refinements. As a result, Metal Slug X was born in 1999. Most of the gameplay replicates Metal Slug 2, but incorporates many improvements. Primarily, a new engine was used for the game that reduced slowdown, especially in areas where many sprites and explosions were going on. In addition, some of the music was changed, some changes were made to enemy spawns, more power-ups were added, new enemies included, stronger versions of weapons were made available, and several other changes. Because the core games are the same, I'll be covering both Metal Slug 2 and Metal Slug X as a single review. In this one, you have the option of 4 rather than 2 characters. Eri and Theo join Marco and Tarma, and even though the characters are essentially cosmetic reskins, this does add a bit more flavor to the experience. The first thing I wanted to mention is I think the game starts out absolutely perfectly. You begin in an Arabian desert village, and thematically this contrasts nicely with the entirety of the original game. While freeing POWs and slaying sword-swinging enemies, you can also ride a gun-toting camel as a new vehicle. I mean, just look at this thing. You can stomp through the desert, flinging blue bolts at enemies. As a new vehicle, I thought it was a great touch that emphasized the over-the-top nature that the series always had. But the camel isn't the only new vehicle here. You can also get the Slug Flyer, which operates as an airborne vehicle that made the game more like a scrolling shooter. Also, the jumping Slugnoid has a twin cannon and also complements the original SV-001 tank. I think this tower area where you can use the Slugnoid to jump between platforms was one of the coolest areas of the game. As in the original, Metal Slug 2 should get immense credit for its amazingly detailed animations. By 1999, 3D games had already been out for several years, so the graphics of the title don't really blow anyone away, but the animations certainly continued to do so. The firing weapons, moving enemies, exploding machines, and dying adversaries were really a sight to behold. The graphical style was also virtually unchanged, which was a great callback for existing fans. As to the new weapons, one really stuck out to me. The laser, which emits a permanent beam, was a standout powerhouse. It was a fun way to cut through enemies quickly, and was a personal favorite of mine. There's also a newly added firebomb that can be found in the second level, and this helps with eviscerating mummies. Both weapons fit into the Metal Slug universe perfectly, and the look, feel, and sound effect of the laser especially was memorable to the core. Even though there are only 2 editions, they help push the series forward in the sequel. Story-wise, Metal Slug 2 continues after the cunning Donald Morden was defeated at the hands of the Peregrine Falcon Squad in the original game. Surprisingly, the generals escaped prison and allied with aliens in a new attempt to bring about a new world order. The squad is then sent to stop him once again, and in the process, uncover some real surprises. Another thing worth mentioning is that the second Metal Slug game introduces transformations for the first time in the series. You can change into a mummy on the second level, a negative status that slows your movement and weakens your firepower. Beyond the mummy, you can also become obese by eating too much food. This status also makes you slower, but changes your weapon's attack. These alterations were expanded upon in future Metal Slug games, but here's where they made their debut. By and large, Metal Slug 2 and X were amazingly successful at varying gameplay and avoiding monotony. From the original Arabian desert village area, you proceed directly into a pyramid, where the squad finds themselves surrounded by mummies. The third stage takes place on a military train, which is completely different from the first 2 levels. If that wasn't enough, the team makes it to China, New York City, and eventually the Arctic Seas. All these areas contain completely unique bosses, gameplay styles, and surprises, and you can tell that great effort was put into making each of them distinct. My favorite boss was the Dragon no Suke, a giant tank at the end of the supply train. I really need to commend the developers for sticking to the original formula that made Metal Slug so great. Instead of reinventing the wheel, the awesome aspects of the original game were improved upon in the sequel, all while retaining all the elements that made it stand out in the first place. It must have been tempting to evolve from some of the original game's style in favor of innovation, but I think the developers made the right decision to embrace the style that worked so well for them before. Between Metal Slug 2 and Metal Slug X, I recommend playing the latter. It cleaned up some of the game's deficiencies and provided a more polished experience. I think the title is a step up from the original game. Though the Neo Geo cart is hard to come by and incredibly expensive, you can pick up the Metal Slug Anthology for the PS2 or Nintendo Wii to play it. You can also find it on Steam, where it's actually very cheap. The title was a great addition to the growing library of SNK Arcade and Neo Geo games at the time, and still remains a staple of the run-and-gun genre of retro classics. It's best experienced with a friend in co-op mode, but it's still fun to play single player as well. Expect a challenge on this one. Unless you play with unlimited credits, the single-hit deaths can be frustrating, but once you nail down all the enemy attack patterns, you will make it through its challenge. It's one of my top 10 favorite Neo Geo games, so I definitely think it's still worth playing today. If you like this review and remember Metal Slug 2 or X, leave a comment below about the most memorable aspect of the game to you. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel and click the bell below to be alerted upon the addition of new ones. Also, please consider supporting my channel via YouTube's Join feature to receive member exclusives, such as advanced videos and complete video transcripts.